Welcome to Hustle and Pro Season 2, talking sports in Frisco from youth to pro. Now here's your host, Kelly Walker.
Welcome to today's episode of Hustle and Pro. We have MMA Hall of Famer and former UFC title contender with us today, Chris Brennan. Welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a fun topic.
Yeah,
I haven't talked MMA before on this show, so this is going to be great. All right, just to start, I want to know a couple little quick things about you. In general, who's your favorite athlete?
Favorite athlete? Probably George St. Pierre. He's one of multi-time MMA world champion, UFC world champion, phenomenal athlete. Michael Jordan also I was always not even a basketball fan, but always a Michael Jordan fan.
Yeah, it's funny how you can be both, right? Because there's so much more to Jordan than just the basketball. The legend, right?
His abilities were, incredible. For
sure. So I have this funny thing going on where I ask my guests what their favorite sports movie is, just because I'm curious. So what's yours?
So honestly, I'm pretty emotional person, so I love watching sports movies, the stories behind them. Invincible with Mark Wahlberg is a football movie. Loved it. There's a lot of Remember the Titans. I have tons of really good sports movies that I like to watch. And again, they're not even sports that I play or played, but just I know what goes into being a professional athlete. So watching that, watching the development and the emotional side of it, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's like the story, the challenges, the journey, right?
Always.
Sometimes less about the actual sport, because the sport inside the movie itself is usually not correct anyways,
Right.
So it's like sometimes when you're really into the sport, you like it less because you notice all the inconsistencies. But
Yep.
All right, so I read that you played traditional group sports as a kid, but then you obviously leaned towards more individual sports. So why is that? Tell me about that.
I just feel like when you lose, it's on you. When you win, it's pretty much on you. I mean, you have coaches and stuff as well, but there's no one else to blame. I played baseball for a few years. I played soccer, and that might have been it at a young age. And then I got into gymnastics and surfing and bodybuilding and motocross and fighting, and all of those are single-person sports. They're not team sports, and I think it was just felt like you work harder and don't have to rely on anybody else.
Yeah. So you're from California.
Yep.
So when you're growing up talking about these things, obviously the surfing part was not a Frisco, Texas activity.
Right.
So those things, when you said like gymnastics, when you started transitioning, those things sound like strength-based things also. Is that something that, because you're not going individual, you're not going and playing golf. You
Right.
seem to lean towards these physical, like core strength, like types of activities.
Yeah, I was definitely athletic. I was little, but I was athletic growing up. I was also an adrenaline junkie. Like to do, a lot of the. I won't jump out of an airplane, but other than that, I like to do the extreme sports.
That's where you draw the line, jumping out of an airplane.
For sure. I almost did once, but decided not to.
So I heard or read also that you were inspired by watching specifically UFC, and I don't want to say his name wrong, so I'll let you. And you kind of jumped in and then started actually like training with this person that you watched and were inspired by. What happened there?
Hoist Gracie. So the Gracie family brought the UFC here. They brought Jiu-Jitsu to the United States, and they created the UFC to show Jiu-Jitsu versus other martial arts and how dominant it was. And this guy was 175 pounds fighting in the UFC that had no weight classes, and he was beating monsters, like giant guys. And at the time, I was bouncing at a club, working security at a bar, and saw this guy fighting, getting paid, beating big guys. And so instantly the next day I started training. And within probably the first 6 months, I was training at his gym.
Wow. That's a pretty intense path to take.
Yeah. It got more intense as it went on. I ended up a couple years later selling my car and moving to Brazil for a year and living on the mat in Brazil at a gym for a year straight and just trained full time.
So you were all in quick.
Yep.
Wow. And so you go and train full-time in Brazil. And so at this point, like, are you working the traditional, like, belt achievements? Or, did you start at nothing? Or had you already had some kind of sense of, like...
I was a bit of a troublemaker. I've gotten a lot of fights growing up. And then jiu-jitsu, changed my life completely. it's a humbling sport. It's something that will take the cocky, arrogant guy and humble him, and then take the very quiet, meek guy and raise their confidence
Build 'em
level,
up.
and kind of level everybody out. And so I did go through the belt system and everything, but I started with experience-wise, no experience.
And you were a black belt in 7 years.
Yep.
Not just a black belt, a special kind of black belt? Is that right?
I mean, to be honest, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt is a special kind of black belt. It's something that doesn't typically happen fast, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of competition, a lot of proving your style, your sport. And so
10 years is the average amount of time it takes, I hear.
Right.
And you did 7.
I did 7. I think both of my sons did 7 as well. Yes, the day before yesterday, I gave out my fastest black belt ever, which was 4.5 years. Who's actually a Frisco PD guy.
No way.
Yeah, who's been with me for 4.5 years. He's just an animal. Yeah, he's an animal.
Wow. You can give him a shout out if you want to call him out.
Yeah, his name's Colton Roloffs. Phenomenal athlete and great police department or police officer here. When you said special black belt, I'm assuming you were talking about no gi. And that is, so I took my gi off, which is the traditional martial arts kimono, and did not train in it anymore, and kind of broke the seal of people that was kind of frowned upon, because that was the traditional way. Mm-hmm. And then I moved on as the first American to do that, and continued to grow that sport in the United States.
Oh, wow. You trailblazed that path, because it's a little more common now, right? The no-gi style.
Oh, yeah. It's all the stuff that I was trying to say before, everyone's saying now.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, yeah, that's surprise.
Told you so. Yeah. And so the no-gi versus the gi, like it literally means not wearing that traditional dress. And there's different things that come into play there, like grips and different holds and different moves. So when you say you were the first one, did you kind of invent some of the different tactics when you're not wearing the gi?
For sure, especially as far as my style goes. Like, my goal was to fight in the UFC, and you can't wear that in the UFC. You could in the first couple, and then you weren't allowed to. And so basically training in it was creating all of these habits of grabbing things that are typically not going to be there when you take it off.
Right.
So I right away took it off and started training without it, and creating new grips, new handles, new ways to stay tight to somebody and get submissions on them when it's, sweaty late in the 5th round when someone's sliding out of something. Usually the gi will hold you and stop that. And so I had to,
it's
I
like
changed
a
a lot of
barrier sometimes too.
For sure.
Wow. So I didn't realize that you were the first in that aspect. Okay. So that might lead into this. Can we talk about some of these nicknames?
Yes, for sure.
Well, I know that one of your accolades is 3-time King of the Cage world champion. So you have to explain a little bit of what King of the Cage actually means, and the Westside Strangler.
So King of the Cage is an organization. It's basically like the UFC. It was a feeder into the UFC at the time, and they were big in California, and that's where I was from. So I was fighting there all the time, and I was a 3-time world champion there. And then the name The Westside Strangler came, it was actually one of my friends. We were I think we were in Mississippi, and some fights were happening. And then there was a confrontation outside of the cage, and we were going over to the hotel, and one of the guys, there was like a large group of guys, and one of the guys' nicknames was the Eastside Assassin. And my best friend at the time, he goes, "Oh my God," he goes, "I can't wait to see this." And he goes, "It's going to be the Eastside Assassin versus the Westside Strangler," because I used to choke everybody.
I was going to say, it's got to be a hold, right?
I had a really good
hold.
guillotine choke, which is like a front headlock choke. And so, he nicknamed me the Westside Strangler, and that stuck forever.
On the spot like that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was funny.
So I mean, that seems to kind of be out there following you around. Do you like that nickname?
Oh, yeah, that's been since probably 2000, maybe, right around 2000, maybe a little before 2099. And the other one I think that I get is the King of the Kimura, which is...
I don't know that one.
It's a submission that I do the most, and it's called a Kimura. I've done it to a lot of people. I have videos on it, on breaking it down, the technique and whatnot. Okay.
So, you mentioned like that nickname maybe came in 1990. So you were competitive from like 94 to 2009, but then kept, like, that's not where you stopped. You actually kept competing in pretty big matches and things all the way up into 2015. Is that right?
So in 2000, what was the last one you said? 2009, I'd moved to Texas in 2006 and fought a few more times. And then I was doing training some motocross kids doing strength conditioning, and I didn't open a gym here. I was injured. I had a rib injury, and so I was out for a couple years. And then my kids started training when I opened my gym here. So I wanted to fight 2 more times. I think I fought in 2012 twice so that my kids could see me fight live, because they had just started training. They'd never seen me fight live, only on TV. And at the time, it would we would rewind it and show them afterwards to make sure everything went okay, right? And
sheltered them from
for sure, for sure. They saw me train and stuff, but they had just never seen a live fight.
Well,
so
it's probably different, the intensity of everything.
Yeah. And so they were in 7th and 8th grade, and I wanted to fight a couple more times so they could see. So in 2012, I fought twice so they could see me fight live, and then I retired. People were asking me if I was going to do jiu-jitsu tournaments because I hadn't done them in a long time. And so then in 2013, 14, 15, I won the No-Gi World Championships in California.
So like round 2. You retired, came back, and then kept winning the totally different, really, style and format, right?
Yes. Format, yes. There's no striking, but in all of my fights, I have 19 submission wins and 18 first-round submission wins. So I was winning with jiu-jitsu my whole career.
Okay.
I had 1 decision and 1 knockout. The rest was all submissions. So
let me get that straight. You were winning with jiu-jitsu in an MMA ring.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Or UFC.
Correct.
Or UFC is a brand name. Okay.
Right. MMA is the sport, and yes, I was winning with submissions, which is jiu-jitsu, inside the cage. My goal was to not get hit, to get you to the ground and submit you.
Yeah.
And that,
that's a good plan. Not get hit.
My kid is a wizard at it right now. He's 4-0 as a professional.
Well, I want to ask you about that. So this is in the family.
Yes.
So what do your kids have going on then?
Oh, I wasn't even sure that they would start to train. And then when I opened my gym here, my youngest boy is really athletic, and my oldest boy, who's now the professional, was not athletic at all. And so I wanted them to start before junior high just for self-defense reasons, and so they started training, and the athletic one instantly wanted to compete, and he did, and he won his first one. And then my son Lucas, who was not athletic, didn't want to compete. And then on the way home from the one that his brother won, he said, "When's the next one?" So I told him, and he said, "I'll do it." And then he started competing. And it really, he was a soft little, books, animals, zoo, computers.
Not a fighter. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not physically, gifted. He was a little squishy but skinny. And now, he's a 2-time jiu-jitsu world champion. He was 3-0 as an amateur. He's 4-0 right now as a pro in Bellator. And he's just found his groove, and it's changed him dramatically. He's more outspoken.
Yeah.
Just a different kid.
He came into his own. He found something. What age did that happen? You're saying junior high, but what age did you see the change happen?
They picked it up faster than anybody. They were
naturally
both,
from you, yeah.
And by their second year, we were competing against kids around Texas that had been doing it their whole lives and beating them. Then we started traveling all over the place. We went to London, and Lucas won the British Nationals there.
Wow.
We went all over the United States competing. Tyler, my youngest one, was a gifted phenom. I think he's 300 and something and 8 as a jiu-jitsu competitor.
Wow.
And redeemed, all of them, but I think 1 or 2 that we never saw the guys again. But he's wrestling now Division I in college.
Oh, okay.
He's a 2-time Texas State wrestling champion and 1-time runner-up. And when he's done in school, he may or may not fight, I'm not sure, but he'll definitely compete at a very high level in jiu-jitsu, no-gi jiu-jitsu, which is paying well now. So, yeah, I had no idea that they were both going to take off with it, but they did.
Well, and you mentioned your gym. So you opened the gym in the middle of all that competition. This wasn't something like you retired and go open a gym, right? I mean, did you open the gym and get that second career and everything started while you were still in the middle of competing?
Super early on. My first UFC fight, I opened the following month. I took the winnings from the UFC fight, came home, and opened my first gym.
Okay.
Inexperienced, I opened a no-gi gym. And at that time, no one even knew what it was.
So I know your Frisco gym is Next Generation MMA. Is that the name of it from day one, or has it had evolution?
It was Next Generation Jiu-Jitsu because MMA wasn't the word yet. It was called NHB, No Holds Barred.
Okay.
And I wanted to stay away from that because it was, it sounded violent and sounded,
Gotcha.
And I was trying to get regular students. So I opened, and within 6 months closed, ended up in my garage, grew to 60 students in my garage, and then moved into a bigger building. And from that point on, and that was in March of '98. and I've been business ever since.
Wow. And is it just the one location here in Frisco, or you have others?
Multiple. I've got one in California, 2 in Texas, 1 in Denver, and then 2 in Ireland, 2 in England, 2 in Norway, and 1 in Australia.
Wow.
Expanded.
That's a lot of reach. Yeah, you're reaching a lot of students.
I had a lot of guys coming to me to train from overseas, and they would stay with me for a few months at a time and train, and they started bringing me back there for seminars, and then we just went into
why not? Let's plant something there, especially if you've made the contacts that were coming here to train with you. Let them take care of your brand over there. If they can do the things, they know how you do the things. Well, I love that you're a proud papa. That's awesome. And listening to you talk about them is great. So you kept saying, I guess it was Lucas that you kept describing as he's not an athlete,
right?
And he's now the reigning champ in all these titles, right? So do you think you can put the athlete in somebody?
If you had asked me before him, I would have said no. I think you're born with athletic ability, and you are. But you typically have the really good athletes that don't work as hard because they're so gifted, and then you have the kids who aren't gifted who work their butt off to become athletic. That's him, but he's done it to a level you would never know that he was not athletic to begin with. He's the hardworking kid that wasn't athletic, and he's very athletic now. Tyler is the hardworking athletic kid, so he's the exception,
pieces,
and those are the tough ones to beat.
But isn't it amazing though how, like you said, you could have all the talent already, if you don't have the will or the drive or want to go do it, it's not going to happen, right? Like,
for sure,
you see that how important that piece of it is, especially in sports like this too, I'm sure.
Yep.
But how, if you don't have the drive to put yourself out there or in your gym probably early mornings, late nights, whatever y'all do, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's where it separates from Division I to professional sports to Olympic athletes. There's that difference is at that point everyone's a gifted athlete who's working hard, and that's that little bit extra. And so Lucas has had a harder time. He lost some matches in jiu-jitsu and in wrestling because he started early right into the competition and wasn't athletic yet. And was
facing kids who, like you said, had already had
for sure. He faced a lot of adversity and overcame it and just became, like I said, he's undefeated.
What age group is Lucas? I doubt his age group anymore.
So he fought his first fight the week before his senior year started against a 30-year-old guy, and beat him in the third round. He fought a week before his senior year ended against another 33-year-old guy and beat him. And then he fought one more time before turning pro. Everyone he's faught's been in their 30s, and he was 17. Texas is the only state that allows it at 17 with notary from the parents. And now he's 20.
So it's not done by age, obviously. It's done by weight class and pro status, the status that you have?
Yeah, in mixed martial arts, yes. In MMA, yes. In jiu-jitsu, age, weight, skill level, all of it's broken down.
Okay.
Same in wrestling outside of high school. But as a fighter, there's no age, there's just weight class, and not even a skill level. You're just basically fighting guys with a record around the same experience as you as you go up. Everyone he's fought's had more fights than him, but he's capable.
I bet that gets in his head early on when you're 17 fighting 30-something-year-old. Yeah. But then once you beat a few of them, it's probably getting in the other way around. It's getting in their head when they go, oh, wait, this sounds easy, but then this kid is beating guys like me.
Yeah, for sure. At the beginning, you were thinking, I'm going to fight a 17-year-old kid. He's not going to be strong. I'm going to beat him. His first opponent walked in holding a baby, holding his wife's hand, carrying a baby with a beard, right? And Luke's 17.
Yeah.
and that's kind of how it's been the whole time. But as kids, him and Tyler were competing in the men's division in jiu-jitsu when they were 14, 15 years old and beating him. So,
would that have happened if you weren't there? I can't imagine another scenario where kids that aren't going to grow up in the gym like that with someone, not even just somebody interested in the sport, but somebody who's high level, excelled in the sport, to really guide them along.
It would have definitely been difficult.
Yeah.
There are a couple kids, but their families are also involved. They definitely have the upper hand. And as a fighter,
literally.
And as a fighter, Lucas, I feel definitely has the upper hand because he's got me coaching him. We live together, I manage him, and I care about his career,
Yeah.
not as a manager would or an agent would, but as a dad would.
On a personal path
Yeah, so I
level.
make sure that he has a very smooth path and no one's going to knock him off of that.
Right. Yeah, I bet you guys you're probably with them every step of the way then.
Yep, every day.
Are y'all traveling? You travel a lot. Obviously, this stuff doesn't all happen in Frisco, Texas. So are you guys mostly gone?
So because he had just started with Bellator, they were fighting at the WinStar. So his first 2 fights were at WinStar, and then COVID happened. And so now they've turned in the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut into basically a bubble for us. So all of the fights are there now. We get in a week early, get tested, get quarantined
ready.
for a day.
Yeah.
Get tested again, and then we're training there. But everyone has their own gym. We all have our own gym with a bike, a sauna, and a treadmill, and mats.
Wow!
And we have our own rooms, and we can't really go anywhere for the whole time we're there.
Did MMA jump on that? Figure that out early? I feel like I was seeing them move forward in sports faster than other big mainstream things that were waiting and sitting around for months trying to figure out how to get athletes safe and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, there was 2 months that fights didn't happen.
That's it.
And then they were the first. Ironically, motocross is my second favorite sport, and they were the second.
Okay.
And just started having events without fans.
Theory here. I don't know. Not calling anybody specifically divas, but do you think some of it is these big leagues have a lot of like player representatives and players that are just not willing to go out there and compete unless the scenario is perfectly right for them?
I think so. I think so. They're getting paid regardless, right? So if you can get paid millions, and we're not getting paid millions, so we want to fight. Like, we're trying to fight because you get paid per fight, show up money, and then win money. It's not just you don't get a flat fee. So we're trying to fight as often as possible because this is how most of the guys that fight make their living.
Right.
And they're not on salaries. So it's very different than the regular big sports, the big 3 or 4 sports.
Right.
So yes, I think there's definitely prima donnas in a lot of the sports that are,
exactly.
Guys that are sitting back.
Obviously not everybody, but it is different. It's like you said, the individual piece of it, that's where that comes into play too. All you need is Lucas to say, let's go.
Right.
You don't need 58 guys on a roster or something.
No, we need one other guy.
To all like agree and sign for it. Like if it's him and he's into it,
right,
you can make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that part. Well, I learned a lot, and I want to talk to you more because there's so many things I know we didn't even get to. I didn't get to brag on all your different titles and being in the Hall of Fame and all that good stuff. But thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad I got to meet you. We learned that we don't live too far away from each other here in Frisco, and so I hope people also go check out your gym, Next Generation MMA. It's in Frisco, right?
Yeah, it's right in the Stonebriar Mall parking lot.
Oh, okay.
On Gaylord and Preston, kind of on the corner.
Yeah,
next door to Platzia and the Vitamin Shop.
Yeah. All right, very good. Well, thank you for your time. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of Hustle and Pro. Remember to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.